You know how sometimes the news just comes at you so fast and you're trying to figure out what's really going on behind the headlines?
Yeah, absolutely. It can feel like a whirlwind.
That's kind of where we are today. We're going to dive deep into something that's been escalating pretty quickly. The tensions between France and Algeria, specifically these recent diplomat expulsions from both sides.
It's a really interesting situation and honestly, a bit concerning. It shines a light on just how complex international relations can be, especially, between countries with such a long shared history.
For sure. We're working mainly off an Al Jazeera piece that lays out the events, and our goal really is to get past the breaking news alerts and understand, okay, what kicked this off, what's the backstory here, and what might happen next.
Sounds good. It's about getting some clarity, right?
Exactly. So let's jump in. What was the immediate thing, the spark that lit this particular fire?
Well, the immediate trigger seems to be France indicting 3 Algerian nationals. And what makes this really stand out is that one of them is apparently an Algerian consular official.
A consular official. Okay, that's already serious.
Right. And they're facing charges linked to the alleged kidnapping of this guy, Amir Boukhours, in Paris.
Ah, Amir Bukhors. Now, he's not just anyone, is he? He's pretty well known online, uses the name Amir DZ on TikTok.
Yeah, huge following, over 1 million. And he's known for being very critical of the Algerian government.
And France actually gave him asylum, didn't they? Just last
It
year.
did, yeah, and that's a crucial detail.
Hmm.
Granting asylum usually means the host country believes the person might be at risk if they went back home.
Right. So France is protecting someone Algeria sees as, well, a critic.
Precisely. So you've got this individual granted asylum, allegedly targeted in France, and the French investigation points towards Algerian officials. That's bound to crank up the diplomatic heat immediately.
Okay, so what exactly happened with Bukhors? The timeline is he was supposedly taken in a Paris suburb, was it last year?
Yeah, back in April of the previous year. But interestingly, he was released the very next day.
Released the next day. Okay. But now, a year on, France charges these 3 Algerians with, what was it, terrorist conspiracy?
That's the charge mentioned, yes.
Hmm.
Terrorist conspiracy. It's obviously a very serious allegation.
And the fact that one of the accused is a consulate employee, that's a big deal.
A huge deal. According to the Al Jazeera piece, this is apparently the first time France has actually detained someone working for the Algerian consulate.
Yeah.
That's crossing a significant line in diplomatic terms.
Okay, so you can see why Algeria might react strongly.
Exactly. It helps explain their pretty forceful response.
And what was their response? They didn't just accept this, I assume?
No, not at all. Their reaction was quite direct. They're demanding France extradite Bukhors back to Algeria.
Redact him. On what grounds?
They say they've issued 9 international arrest warrants for him. The charges range from fraud to, significantly, terrorism, which mirrors the French charges against the Algerian officials.
Wow, okay. So France says terrorist conspiracy against Algerian nationals. Algeria says terrorism against the guy France is protecting. It's like a legal standoff.
It really is. France sees him as an asylum seeker under their protection. Algeria sees him as a wanted fugitive. It's a fundamental clash.
And this clash then spilled over into kicking diplomats out.
Precisely. After the indictments in France, and with their consular employees still detained, Algeria retaliated. They ordered 12 French diplomats out of the country.
12 diplomats. How much notice did they give them?
A very tight deadline, just 48 hours to leave. That's a very strong diplomatic signal. It shows serious displeasure.
Yeah, 48 hours for a dozen diplomats. That's not a minor disagreement. That's shouting from the rooftops, diplomatically speaking. How did France take that? What was their comeback?
Well, as often happens in these situations, France responded symmetrically, tit for tat. They announced they'd be expelling 12 Algerian diplomatic and consular staff from France.
12 for 12. Okay. Any other moves from France?
Yes, and it's another significant one. France also recalled its ambassador from Algiers for consultations.
Recalling the ambassador, that's always a serious step, isn't it? It's like hitting pause on high-level relations.
It absolutely is.
Is?
It signals a major breakdown and a need to reassess the relationship from Paris.
Did France give a reason for their counter-expulsion? Did they link it to anything specific?
The French foreign minister, Jean-Noël Barrot, was quite clear. He directly linked France's decision to expel the Algerian diplomats to the initial arrests of the Algerian nationals, including that consular official.
So they're basically saying, you reacted to our legal process, so we're reacting to your reaction.
That seems to be the message, yes. Our actions were based on law enforcement. Your expulsions are purely political retaliation.
And didn't the French Foreign Ministry make a point about the history of this? Something about how unusual Algeria's move was?
Yes, and this really puts the whole thing in context. They highlighted that if Algeria actually goes through with kicking out these French diplomats, it would be the first time this has happened since Algeria won its independence back in 1962.
The first time since 1962. Wow.
Think about that. Over 60 years of, ups and downs in the relationship, but never this specific kind of public formal expulsion of diplomats from Algiers.
That really underscores the severity then. This isn't just another bump in the road.
Not at all. It suggests something potentially more fundamental is breaking down. It's got historical weight.
But what's so striking, and the Al Jazeera article mentions this too, is that this blow-up comes right after it seemed like things were actually improving, getting back on track.
That's what makes the timing so jarring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Literally just a week before all this kicked off, the French foreign minister was in Algiers, meeting with President Tebboune.
And what came out of that meeting? Positive signs.
Publicly, yes. They actually stated that bilateral relations were back to normal after a period of what the article called simmering tensions.
Back to normal 1 week, expelling diplomats the next. That's quite a reversal.
It really shows how volatile things can be, how quickly apparent progress can be undone when these underlying issues flare up.
Simmering tensions, that suggests maybe things weren't quite as normal as they seemed on the surface. What were those issues? What was causing that tension before this latest incident?
Well, there were a couple of significant friction points mentioned. One big one was President Macron's support for Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara.
Western Sahara, always a sensitive topic between Algeria and Morocco, and France stepping in.
Exactly. Macron backing Morocco's plan apparently caused real outrage in Algiers. Algeria, of course, traditionally backs the Polisario Front, which wants independence for the territory. So France picking a side there was always going to be problematic for relations with Algeria.
Okay, so that's a major geopolitical disagreement. What else was causing friction? Wasn't there something about a writer being jailed?
Yes, that too. The jailing of a French-Algerian writer, Boulem Sansal, in Algeria the previous month. President Macron had actually called publicly for his release.
Which France would see as defending free speech, perhaps, but Algeria might see as
Interference. Interference in their internal judicial matters. That kind of public call from a foreign leader, especially the French president given the history, often doesn't go down well. It adds to the resentment.
So it feels like these disagreements over Western Sahara, over the Sansal case, they were bubbling under the surface, even while officials were trying to smooth things over publicly.
That seems very likely. These weren't resolved issues. They were perhaps just pushed aside temporarily. And now this Bucors affair, the alleged kidnapping plot, the arrests, it's acted like a detonator for all that stored-up tension.
It makes sense. It's not happening in isolation. It's landing in an environment that was already pretty strained, despite the recent positive talk.
Precisely. And when you factor in the whole post-colonial legacy between France and Algeria, that adds another layer of complexity. Mutual suspicion can run deep, and it doesn't take much to bring it back to the surface.
So this feels like it could be more than just a temporary diplomatic spat, more than just trading expulsions. Could this actually unravel the reconciliation efforts we saw recently?
It's a definite risk. Recalling the ambassador is a strong sign that normal diplomatic business is on hold. It could freeze cooperation on all sorts of things: trade, security cooperation, cultural exchanges. Everything becomes harder when the relationship is this frosty at the top level.
It really throws the future trajectory into question.
It does. And we absolutely cannot forget the historical context here. Algeria being a former French colony,
Yeah.
the history is always present. It shapes perceptions, reactions, everything.
Colonialism, the war for independence, migration issues, it all creates this incredibly sensitive backdrop.
Absolutely. So events like this, they carry a symbolic weight, often beyond the immediate political calculations. Public opinion on both sides gets involved, and historical grievances can easily resurface. It makes managing these crises even harder.
Okay, so let's try and pull the threads together for everyone listening. We started with the immediate trigger. France indicting Algerian nationals, one a consular official, over the alleged kidnapping of this government critic, Amir Bucors, in Paris.
Right. That led to Algeria demanding Bucors' extradition and then ordering 12 French diplomats out within 48 hours.
And France hit back, expelling 12 Algerian diplomats and, crucially, recalling its ambassador from Algiers.
And we have to remember, this didn't just come out of the blue. It landed on top of existing strains, disagreements over Western Sahara, the jailing of the writer Boulem Sansal, even though there had been recent attempts to say things were back to normal.
And the really big takeaway, the historical significance. This could be the first time since Algerian independence in 1962 that French diplomats are expelled from the country. That shows just how serious this rupture is.
It definitely signals a potential major setback for the relationship.
So that brings us to the final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on. Considering this deep, complicated history between France and Algeria, and thinking about those recent, maybe fragile steps towards reconciliation, what do you think the lasting fallout from this diplomatic breakdown might be for both countries, and maybe even for the wider region?
Yeah, and what other factors might be swirling beneath the surface here? What are we seeing in these public moves? It's a relationship, as we said, with incredibly deep roots and clearly some very persistent, very complex challenges that keep coming up. Lots to think about there.